Hi, boys and girls. Our next book of the day is The Invisible Boy, written by Trudy Ludwig and illustrated by Patrice Barton. This is one of our favorite stories to read to you. Here we go. The Invisible Boy. Can you see Brian, the invisible boy? Even Mrs. Carlotti has trouble noticing him in her classroom. She's too busy dealing with Nathan and Sophie. Here he is. What do you notice about him and all the other kids in line? Do you notice that he's not in color? He's in black and white? Because that makes him invisible. Nathan has problems with what Mrs. Carlotti calls volume control. He uses his outside voice inside too much. Sophie whines and complains when she doesn't get her way. Nathan and Sophie take up a lot of space. Brian doesn't. When the bell rings for recess, Micah and JT take turns choosing kids for their kickball teams. Wonder why. The best players get picked first. Then the best friends of the best players get picked. Then the friends of the best friends get picked. Only Brian is left, still waiting and hoping. JT glances in Brian's direction and just as quickly looks away. Oh, we've got enough players for each team, he tells the others. Come on, let's play ball. And what do you notice about all these kids' faces? Do you notice that none of them noticed Brian? And if you look at his face and his body, but you have a clue. But I also know you could be in his shoes and put yourself right here. Imagine yourself right here being Brian. How would this feel? So tell yourself a couple words that would describe how you think Brian is feeling. Because that's how you would feel if you were in his shoes. But it's always interesting to me as a teacher that when I look over here, I don't see any faces. Looking over and they're not worried. In the cafeteria, Madison and her friends talk about her birthday party. The rope swing over the pool was awesome, says JT. Yeah, so was the water slide, adds Fiona. That was the best pool party ever. I'm so glad you guys had fun, says Madison. Everybody did, except Brian. He wasn't invited. And do you notice? Well, first of all, maybe you've been in Brian's shoes before and maybe have seen other kids get invited to parties and you weren't invited. And we all know how that feels. We feel left out, right? But do you notice right from the very beginning how Brian reacts? Like, I see girls here whispering, and some people are waiting patiently. And then there's Brian. He doesn't react. So it's just important. We learn from our characters also not about just how they act, but how they react to others around them. We learn a lot about our characters and even people in our lives. How does he react to other kids? So here, even at recess, he was hoping to be picked, right, to join a team like everyone else. And he was excited. He was hopeful. And then he wasn't. But notice how he reacted. And could he have reacted differently? I know I've been on a playground before, and I know I see kids get mad if they don't get picked on a team. But that's not Brian. He walked away peacefully. And then at the cafeteria, kind of keeps going for the guy. But no one noticed that he wasn't included. So he still feels invisible, unseen. Just like at recess. But look how he reacts. He doesn't look angry. He's just eating his lunch and listening to his classmates. I learned a lot about him. I think he's probably a very nice kid. At choosing time, while the other kids play board games and read, Brian sits at his table doing what he loves to do best. He draws fire-breathing dragons scaling tall buildings. Thank you for toasting my marshmallow. I got you now. And he draws greedy pirates digging for treasure. Crackers? Arr! Yay! Space aliens locked in intergalactic battles. And superheroes with the power to make friends wherever they go. Hi, friend, have a cookie. And I notice with his drawings too, he's pretty talented. Can you see he has some skill? And notice he's smiling while he's drawing. So I love how he reacts to situations in his life. And we learn a lot about what a quiet, nice kid he is. And wow, if he's got this talent, we also see a creative side to Brian. On Monday morning, Mrs. Carlotti introduces Justin, a new student, to the class. Brian smiles shyly at him. Some of the other kids sneak looks at Justin, trying to figure out if he's cool enough to be their friend. They hadn't quite made up their minds yet. And you can see they're all curious and maybe a little shy. And we have Brian smiling, welcoming. At lunch, Madison and JT watch Justin eat with chopsticks. What's that? Asked Madison as she points at Justin's food. It's bulgogi. Bull what? Bulgogi. It's Korean barbecued beef. My grandma made it for me. It's really good. Do you want to try some? Oh, there's no way I'd eat bulgogi. And the other kids laugh. All of them, that is, except Brian. He sits there wondering which is worse, being laughed at or feeling invisible. So, boys and girls, a reaction we see Brian having here is the word concern. And so a lot of you have been talking about, after books, things that touch your heart. And the big word for that is empathy. When your heart shows concern and care for someone else or something else. And so here we notice and learn that Brian has empathy for people. He's caring because he already knows how hard it is to feel invisible. But he's like, man, is this worse? or being teased and laughed at? Is that worse? And it hurts our heart to see him laughed at that way. And hopefully this will inspire us to welcome new students and not laugh at them. And if you notice right from the beginning, he comes in with a new culture. Justin is bringing culture that isn't their culture. So it is different and it looks different. And that's okay. The next day, when Justin goes to his cubby to put away his backpack, he notices a piece of paper with his name on it. And what I love about this part is look at Justin's smile. Because we know on the day before, that was kind of a hard moment for him. And we learned the thoughts inside Brian's head. He was thinking, man, that's not good. That could not have felt good. And now look, Justin, I thought the bulgogi looked good. Yum. From Brian. So this action right here, back here, we talked about empathy and caring. Well, here he's thoughtful. So he tried to cheer Justin up and make him feel cared about, make him feel visible. I like that about him. At morning recess, Brian finds a piece of chalk on the ground and starts drawing away. Hey, you're Brian, right? Yeah. Thanks for the note. And see, we know that Brian loves art and he's got talent for that. Hey, Justin, Emilio calls out from the tetherball court. You're up next. Sorry, I gotta go, says Justin. By the way, that's a really cool drawing, he adds before taking off. So I have a question. Let's go back. Do you see something? Look right here. Do you notice something? What changed? Look here. Do you notice that there's color? Brian has color. He's no longer just black and white, boys, but he is a little bit, right? But why? What happened? I want you to hit pause and I want you to share with someone at home or share with a classmate. Why is Brian looking different? What happens? So you'd say, I think Brian's changing because, well, what happened differently? Not here, not here, not here, and not here. Are people seeing him? Are people including him? No, and so that makes someone feel invisible, unseen. And then something happens. What does Justin return? He notices him and says, thank you for your note. And then tells him that is a really cool drawing. So boys and girls, the difference, the change is somebody noticed him. He is not invisible to Justin, which makes him not invisible to others. I mean, do we learn a lot about Justin too? He's thoughtful and kind. Back in class, Mrs. Carlotti asked the kids to team up in 2s or 3s for a special project. The kids scurry around the room to pair off. Brian heads toward Justin. Uh-oh, what happened? So now they're kind of fighting over the new kid. Not really fighting, but having a hard time sharing, and now Brian's back by himself. I'm already with Justin, said Emilio. Find someone else. Aw. Brian looks at the floor, wishing he could draw a hole right there to swallow him up. Yeah, that would feel embarrassing and disappointing. But wait, Mrs. Carlotti said we can have up to 3 people in our group. We're only 2. Come on, Emilio. Let him work with us. Okay, I guess. Aw, now look, guys. He's still a little bit invisible. Definitely doesn't make him feel good at all. Really wants him to disappear, but they notice him. And color's starting to come back. Mrs. Carlotti gives the class directions for the project. Your assignment is to work together to write a story about what you see in that photograph. Use your imagination and have fun. And notice the color on all of them. None of the boys are feeling invisible. Wow, what cool, says Emilio. What kind of people do you think would live in houses like that? I don't know, but I bet Brian could draw them to go with our story, says Justin. And Brian smiles as he takes out his lucky pen. And Justin notices what he's good at and celebrates that by saying, I bet he can do this. And look at those boys all working together, all including each other. No one's fighting or left out. We'd call this teamwork, wouldn't we? But we also would call it friendship. Narrator. Hi, I'm the narrator. And if you're wondering why a pirate got the part of a narrator, I'll tell you. It's all in the agent. And so here's their story. The crooked story we made up on the spot. And look at this creativity they have. Hats on that they created. Those are so cool. Look at their pictures. And then they have their writing. We call these props. Look at those amazing props. All that they accomplished together. And Brian didn't have to be left out, and neither did Emilio or Justin. At lunchtime again, Brian's least favorite part of the day. Another 20 long minutes of kids talking and laughing with everyone else but him. But I notice he's coming with a little bit of color. Brian! He hears someone shout. Hey, Brian, over here! And I really appreciate that Emilio's okay with that this time, because he knows he's got to share and they can all be friends. Brian turns and sees Justin waving him over. Emilio nods at Brian as he makes room for him at the table. I love that. No longer invisible. Cookie? Thanks. And Justin even brought cookies for everyone to share, not just for one person. Oh, look at his lunch bag. Look at Brian's lunch bag. Maybe, just maybe, Brian's not so invisible after all. And I love the kindness that Justin has. And I love that it all started with this note that Brian shared to cheer him up. And look at all these random acts of kindness being spread, where they're all kind and they all make a friend and they don't feel invisible.